My name is Yat and I work for NETAPP as a storage infrastructure architect. Yeah, I know if you look at your booklet, you were expecting somebody else, but I figured out this week I just take over NETAPP Southeast Europe and I do all my presentations, which is not true because I need to leave earlier, so we did a swap in my colleague. So what to expect in this session? So I looked into the booklet, I don't know how many of you did, and basically nearly every single vendor here at the IT Congress has a presentation on the digital transformation. Did you realize this? Anybody attended more vendors doing speeches on it? Maybe anyone did all of the vendors doing digital transformation? So the funny thing is that I'm not sure how much funny is this, but we don't have a product digital transformation. So if you call my sales rep that, hey, can you please quote me 3 equipments of digital transformation, we don't have one. So there's a very little amount of NetApp like product reach in this presentation. So I'm not going to I'm not in selling mode in the next 45 minutes or 40 or whatever. So I'm not going to tell you that, hey, buy this and do this. And let's say I'm trying to give you ideas. I have a few stories to share, and I have a few things on how things are going and how things are changing and how we try to react and so on. So obviously there's a lot of disruption in the data center area. And obviously we are infrastructure vendors, right? So there are a lot of things which are changing the IT and the infrastructure market. A lot of the things are good for us, and a lot of the things are not, let's say, not so good for us. So we need to change. So for example, if you look at, it's not necessarily true for Southeast Europe, but a lot of the cloud service providers are taking over and taking services from on-prem in a lot of customer space. And obviously, if you look at companies like Microsoft, who are extremely involved in the public cloud space, they would like to see all of their customers 100% in the cloud, right? And there are infrastructure vendors like us who would see all the customers 100% doing on-prem. Now, probably none of these will be true 5 years from now, so we can expect some sort of a hybrid kind of working from customers, and this is also something we try to figure out in the future. So let's see. I don't know how much probably some of you saw these 4 examples. These 4 companies are the best examples, like kind of the next generation digital era. Basically, if you look at these companies, there's something common between them. Each of these companies are the biggest in their, let's say, in their market. So if you look at Uber, and yesterday I was completely surprised that in TV show you can actually use Uber. In most of Europe, you cannot do it anymore. So, for example, in Sofia, Bulgaria, it's banned already. In Hungary, it doesn't work anymore. It still works, for example, in Czech Republic and Greece, and in some part of Germany either. But we can do Uber. But if you look at Uber, basically Uber is today's biggest transportation company ever, and they don't own a single car. So they don't have cars. The only thing they have is they have data, and they have contracts with people who drive for them, right? If you look at Airbnb, it's the same sort of story. They don't own a single bed, they don't own a single flat or a single hotel, and still they are the biggest ever in the accommodation business. So the only thing they own is data. And if you look at the other two, is Alibaba is kind of the APAC version of Amazon. They are way bigger than Amazon, and basically they are the biggest retailer. Still, they don't have any goods to sell, so they just an open market. And also, if you look at Facebook, the main interest of Facebook is that Facebook is a media company, but they don't generate any content. They just let the users share the content, and they store this content, and obviously they are kind of using this content to sell you stuff, to figure out more information about you, and so on. So if you look at the details about these 4 companies, the only common between them that they don't own anything else than data. They don't have any asset. The only asset they have is data. And it sounds a little bit weird that I say that only method, because last week there was an article on The Economist, and basically they stated nothing less but the most valuable asset today is data. So it's not oil anymore. Oil is not that important anymore than data. So obviously for us who basically we spend all of our times doing storage-related stuff, and we are trying to figure out now how to get into the next generation data center, how to help customers figure out how to store data properly, how to protect this data. Obviously for us it's kind of an exciting time, but also in the same time we need to understand that not all of this data is going to store on premises. So not all of this data is going to store on NetApp storage devices, obviously. In some of the cases, we could think that okay, a lot of this data is moving to the cloud, but hopefully some of the cloud services will buy storage from us. But I have to tell you that's not happening. So that's not really the use case what we are seeing. So what we're trying to figure out is how we can help customers protect this data, and how the customers can best use their data and move it between different data centers, maybe hyperscalers. I know it's not really here yet. I don't see a lot of my customers from Romania pushing extreme amount of data into Amazon. Although, if I look at the other side of the world, I had discussions with colleagues last week, and basically we see customers in the US pushing petabytes of data into the cloud. It's not really here yet, but it shows pretty much where the world is going. The other thing I need to mention when we speak about data is that there's an obvious need to protect the data. So if data became the most important asset, obviously we need to figure out how we protect it. Not just protect it in the traditional way, because obviously, so if you look at the NetApp history, when we came out with our first product ever, the first feature we had was integrated data protection. So NetApp as a company revealed in 1991, and in 1992 our first product ever was integrated data protection. So we have a very good history how to protect data against classic data losses. Like you have a user who maybe having a bad day or don't really figure out what he's doing, deletes some data, or you have wrong running code which deletes data. We have the solution for this. But these days, the let's say the not necessary good way of using data is also a very important treat. If you look at conferences which where the main topic is ID security, you will sooner or later bump into today is one of the biggest threats of ransomware. End of last week and early this week there were a pretty big attack, and actually we also had a lot of customers who bumped into ransomware attacks. And basically what's happening is that there's let's say an outsider force who creates some sort of code. In some way you are affected by that code. The code encrypts all of your data, and basically you have two ideas. You look for your restores or you pay, right? You don't pay. Why do you don't pay?
Because they will have more money to buy equipment to rent, basically to raise the business.
Yeah, that's a pretty good approach actually, yes. The truth.
It's better to lose money, to have a downtime, if you restore your data.
I'm absolutely agree with you, but look at like this. So let's say you are running a company and you got ransomware, and you have business critical applications to run, or let's say mission critical applications to run, and you figure out that okay, you need X amount of time to restore your data, which will cost you X amount of money, right? Because your business is done. And let's say paying for ransomware is half of that money.
Okay, but if you pay, you are sure that they will provide you the correct.
No, you are not.
If
Absolutely
you are
not.
restoring, it's 100%.
True, true.
It's like you owe me money, yeah? And I send it to you, get the money back.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And for the recording, so basically, you are not really assured that once you pay the money, you really will get back your data. You can run your operation. So definitely, our company policy, and I have to tell you that some of our customers who were affected by ransomware, they were like, okay, no problem. I have my integrated data protection, so I just go 1 hour back, and okay, I lost 1 hour of operations, but I still have my data. So previously we didn't really care. We didn't really produce content for how to protect yourself against ransomware, because for us it was obvious that most of the NetApp customers are using the integrated data protection, what we provide with our storage solutions, and for us it was like it's an obvious solution that, okay, if you got something, you just go back, because this is basically the most basic value proposition what we do for 25 years. So our customers knows this, but our marketing organizations figured out that we need actually to make a white paper on it. So we produced a white paper that how to protect. Because if you look at IT security conferences, a lot of these conferences treat that, okay, how you protect your employees, how you educate them, what software to run, and so on and so on and so on. But most of the cases, the ransomware attacks are human-based. So if you have a weak point, and in every organization there will be at least one human who will have this weak point, and there's a pretty important thing. Okay, so let's assume that none of us will get affected by ransomware attacks. So what we do? So obviously, if you look at the latest and not so latest news in the storage market, you probably by now figured out that NetApp is the last kind of independent data and storage provider in the world. So there's no other company who is only focusing on data. So that's what we are doing, and also that's what's very important for us, kind of in the next generation trends. And basically, most of the enterprises are agreeing on that basically in the next generation, the managing of data and figuring out what data is doing is the most important thing. I guess you've seen all of these before, right? These are the most important things we don't want to see this time. Battery drains, no wireless. We need to wait for stuff. How many of you uses mobile phone for most of the things what you do every day? I use my mobile phone pretty much for everything. I do have my laptop, so if I need to handle files, or I need to create stuff which is not possible on my mobile, I still use my laptop, and I need to use my laptop for doing my presentations. I have to tell you, I hate to do presentations from using PowerPoints. So if you see me, in most of the cases, you would see me from the whiteboard. So that's how I do my discussions with the customers and partners. In some cases, I still need to use the PowerPoint, but in most of the cases, I just use my mobile. And the reason I'm using my mobile because I am lazy. So basically, dictation works pretty well for a few years now. So I'm just using dictation to dictate my emails, my texts, and all of these. And if you look at the stats, on an average, people check their emails 40 times every hour. That's insane. That's insane. I can't confirm the second number because my kids are not teenage yet, but probably it's true. Probably. My daughter had in their class they have a Viber group, and yesterday when I left, on the Viber group, my daughter had 1,600 unread messages. So that's 1,600 unread messages. Probably she's lazy too, so it probably it's coming from somewhere, right? But true that they exchanged a lot. And if you translate it to value, if there's a slowdown, then basically Amazon will lose in 100 microseconds. Amazon will lose 1% of their sales. So there's a business value behind this stuff. So IDC. So we vendors, we always like to rely on Gartner and IDC, what they say, how they say it, and so on. Last week I had the opportunity to see someone from Gartner on stage presenting, and they actually have some ideas what's going on, let's say. So what IDC say that basically the third platform, the way they call it, the third platform, which is the kind of the next generation IT environment, is built out of these kind of use cases. So obviously social, most of us are using some sort of social media. You don't necessarily need to think of like Facebook all the time, but all of us using some sort of social media to connect with our colleagues inside a company or maybe outside of the company. For me, to be honest, I don't have colleagues in country. I don't have another Hungarian speaker within NETAPP, so I cannot talk to people actually. There are no other people in Hungary. The closest colleagues I have are typically in Austria or Slovenia. So we mainly use social media, emails, and short messages and things like that to interact with each other. And that's basically getting the main case. Obviously mobile. So as we agreed on already, mobile is the number one, let's say, work tool these days. And all of these tools are generating a huge amount of data, so analytics is an absolute need. So we don't really just generate this amount of data, we also need to understand what's in that data. And most of the companies, to tell you the truth, like Facebook and Google, they wish to use this data as much as possible. I wouldn't say against you, but for them to be able to figure out what you are most interested in so they can sell you stuff, right? And cloud. So obviously cloud is taking over, and as I said, we are an infrastructure company traditionally, so we also need to figure out how we help our customers. So this is something. So this third platform thing is. So I know most of the marketing stuff comes from the US, and some of them just stays in the US and we don't care anymore. But basically the third platform and data analytics is something which is coming into Europe already, and it is in Europe and it's growing massively in Europe. So this is something we probably should care. The funny thing is a lot of my colleagues are asking me. Typically in the US, what I spend my days with, and I always tell them, I try to translate the marketing comes from the US to an understandable language, what we can really make use of in Eastern Europe, because there's a little bit of gap between the two markets. And what I always say that, okay, in the US, in every year there's a big wave, and all the companies are excited, they want to be on the top of that wave. And in Eastern Europe, we typically see maybe every third or every fourth of these waves, and that's which is actually coming in, and most of these waves are coming in much stronger than actually it happens in the US. So maybe digital transformation will be these waves. So let's see some use cases. So obviously all of this I was speaking to now is only theory and nice things about Facebook and Google and things like that, but let's see what really it means. So let me tell you an example. We have one of our customers, one of the first ever all-flash customer. It's the German weather forecast company. The company name is DWD. So it is Don't think like weather forecast, like they're generating data for the daily news that, hey, how sunny it's going to be tomorrow. What they are doing is they have over 2,000 sensors through the country. They collecting the data of these sensors, and basically they are providing real-time alerts on the weather for aviation, for healthcare, for ambulance, for people on the highways, and so on and so on. So this is what they're doing is real-time analytics on data, what they produce. This is actually real-time value because what they are doing is that, for example, if there's an accident on the highway, they will send information for the aviation so the ambulance helicopter can take off and can get there to pick the people out of their cars and so on. So there's 3 types of analytics. So how we can use the data, how we can actually process the data. So the number one, what we are doing for a long time is kind of a batch processing. So we have the huge amount of data. It's generated. We collect them through days, weeks, months, whatever. And basically, we are using some sort of batch processing to process this data. So that's the obviously easiest way. The reason we do it, we try to figure out what happened and why. And the reason we want to figure out is because we basically understanding what happened, maybe we can react similar events better in the future. The second type is obviously real time. So real time analytics is that basically I'm looking at generated data which generates right now, and I'm trying to figure out, for example, demand generation. I'm trying to look at fraud. So think like, for example, an online web store, and the requests for customers are growing massively. So I can start new instances to grow the capacity of my web store, for example. Or I'm looking at real-time attacks from different kind of like hackers or things like that. And the third type of analytics is predictive analytics. It's very, very similar to batch. I don't necessarily wait that much with the processing. And basically, instead of answering that what happened and why, we try to figure out what's going to happen next. One of the best examples for predictive analytics is that if there are NETAPP customers in the room, you may know that we are using auto support. So we collect data from NETAPP controllers across the world. We are actually doing it since 1995, so that's a little known fact. We are doing it for 22 years now. And basically what we are doing with this data is that we try to figure out and we try to find patterns that how controllers behave, for example, after a code upgrade and things like that, so we can warn customers that, okay, if you do this, probably this will happen. Or, for example, we have a larger batch of hard drives which are not behaving properly, so we can send out a warning for our customers that, hey, you have these hard drives in slot 2, 5, and 7. You are running an older code, and this is what we see may going to happen, so please upgrade the code on those hard drives. So for this kind of use case, as I said, for predictive analysis, we are using Splunk, and most of our customers are using Splunk as well. So basically what they are doing is they are collecting data, and they are trying to do some sort of predictions on this collected data. As you see, it's not a NETAPP product. We are partnering with Splunk, but we as a company cannot sell you Splunk. We can give you ideas what you can do with our partner companies, but if you call us that, hey, can you sell me Splunk, then basically I can tell you that, sorry, no, because it's not our product. The second example is some sort of MapReduce environment. This is more of the batch processing. It's typically a distributed type of batch processing of generated data. And this is not as simple and not as straightforward as a Splunk. So if I look at Splunk, Splunk is a single product, you buy it from a single company, and most probably you will run Splunk in your own data center on your own generated data. MapReduce is not really like that, because MapReduce is not a single company, it's more like a technology. It's produced by many technologies. And MapReduce as a technology is available not only on your data center, so it's not only something what you can deploy in your premises, but it's also available as a service in different cloud providers. So obviously it's much easier to run anything as a service. So if you look at how to run MapReduce, if you look at the differences between figuring out how to deploy it or going to Amazon Web Services and just get MapReduce as a service, they call it AMR. Now obviously it's much easier to run it in Amazon. The only challenge is that where Amazon is running, your data is not there. So obviously either you need to figure out how to move your data where the MapReduce is running, or how to build MapReduce where your data is. So these are the challenges probably need to figure out. And also typically in analytics environment, the database services are typically different. So for example, if you look at traditional enterprise IT, the database environments are typically like Oracle, MySQL, Microsoft SQL, maybe IBM DB2 and all of these stuff. In analytics and big data, the database services are typically distributed. So they are not running on a single machine, it's distributed between either physical machines or instances in the cloud. And the way we call them, they are called NoSQL. One of the most popular example of NoSQL database is MongoDB. So why NetApp? So obviously I told a lot about what you can do, what's the problem here, what are the challenges here. So what we are doing. So obviously the easiest way to think of it is on-premise solution. So at the end of the day, what we do and what we do for the longest time, we basically manufacture infrastructure which stores data, and we do believe that the data storages what we manufacture are unique from some point of view. So we have 3 different platforms here. The 3 different platforms, they all have some sort of unique value proposition in this environment, and basically this is what we can use to help you. So even though as I said, we don't really have a digital transformation product, we cannot really sell you Splunk either as a product or as a service, but we can help build Splunk environments providing data storage behind it. So basically, out of the 3 platforms, if you look at E-Series, we are using E-Series for a long time to provide standard data storage behind the distributed services. The reason we are doing that, and originally we didn't really think of this idea, is that if you look at any of the distributed data services, so you can look at any use cases like storage as a service, you can look at Splunk, you can look at MongoDB, or even you can look at things like OpenStack or Ceph. Most of these software infrastructures are building on standard 1 rack unit servers with internal drives inside them. And basically most of them provides the value proposition that, okay, you don't really need to buy infrastructure, you don't need to buy storage and things like that. You just buy standard off-the-shelf rack servers, you build your software on it, and it will just work magic. What we figured out, and we've run many tests and many like economic evaluation on this, but we figured out that basically with E-Series, we can build cheaper, denser, and faster data capabilities with the standard rack unit servers. So if you have any similar product where project where you are going to deploy services on top of standard rack unit servers, and you need a massive amount of data, it may be a good idea to look at these series. In many cases, it can be cheaper and faster than standard rack unit servers. We have a new platform provided last year called SolidFire. With SolidFire environments, SolidFire is a distributed large-scale storage environment. We typically do NoSQL, so MongoDB environments. We have a certification how to build it, and basically we can provide guaranteed performance and integrations into this environment. And the last one is the most weird one. So why is the most weird one? So ONTAP is our oldest platform, and ONTAP for us it's a little bit of everything. So obviously, compared to these environments, so SolidFire and E-Series is on-prem only. So we typically sell these storage environments for on-prem to build your own environment. With SolidFire, we have a lot of service providers, but these two platforms are typically data center equipment. ONTAP is a little bit different because traditionally, so let's say the first 20 years of ONTAP is similar to these two platforms. So this is something we think of that we are going to sell, and our customers going to purchase, deploy, install, and use it over years. But also the consumption model of ONTAP is changing massively. So if you look at the typical consumption models, how consumption models are changing, that basically, obviously we have this with all of our platforms. So that's the best of breed built appliance. That's the engineered appliance. So this is where we are extremely good at. This is what we are doing for 25 years. But there are 4 other use cases and consumption models which are also extremely important. So we started with ONTAP and SolidFire to move into these spaces. So if you look at software on a commodity service, we have this with ONTAP for 2 years now, and it's getting wider and wider. Last year we came out with a high availability. So if any of our customers or somebody who is looking at ONTAP from a feature perspective, ONTAP is pretty much available running on standard rack unit servers running on top of virtualization. So that's pretty much the reality now. We are involved in Converged, so we mainly using and we are mainly working with Cisco and Fujitsu to provide converged infrastructures. So basically, we have test and validation process and basically joint support services with both of these companies. And basically, last year we figured out that currently on the converged infrastructure market, we are growing much faster than any of our competitors. So FlexPod is the product what we have there, and it has a market momentum now. As of today, we are not in hyper yet, so we are not in hyper converged yet. We basically did an announcement earlier this year that we will release a product this year. We are going to release a hyper-converged infrastructure somewhere later in the year. So that's still a gap here, but in the same time we are massively in the as a service. So a lot of our customers started to look into, instead of buying infrastructure on-prem, how they can leverage our services, buying it as a service. So there are 2 ways to look at it. One of the ways that we have ONTAP running in hyperscale providers. So what we are doing is that if you look at Amazon Web Services, or if you look at Microsoft Azure, you can buy an ONTAP storage as a service. So it's not the traditional CapEx purchasing model anymore. So if you look at the traditional purchasing model of storage devices, that let's say you figure out in January that you want to buy a storage, then you start to size how it should look like, then you go to procurement, and then you do an RFP, and then vendors answering it, and then you figure out which vendor you want to buy for, and then you provide a purchase order, and 4 to 6 weeks later, the vendor ships the product, and you start to deploy it. If you look at storage as a service, so the same ONTAP running in a public cloud service, Amazon Web Services or Azure, then basically what you are doing is you swipe your credit card and 5 minutes later you deploy your data. So that's how it works. The purchase model is completely changing and still exactly the same storage service. The only difference is that in the first case you pay CapEx and you own the hardware, in the second case you rent it and you just run it as a service. And what we basically built around this is what we call the data fabric. So what we are trying to have is that if you have services on-prem and if you have services in the cloud, we help you how to move the data between these. One of the most important use cases obviously is cloud burst. So let's say you have services you wish to run, but basically the compute resources what you have on-prem is not enough for this. So you can move data to the public cloud, rent compute for a short amount of time, run the analytics or whatever you want to run, and then move the data back. So that's a typical use case. For this, we developed a couple of years ago the NFS connector to Hadoop. So if you have a massive amount of unstructured data on NFS services, you can just use the connector, and you can use Hadoop as a service in most of the hyperscale environments. The other thing we freshly came in is again as a service. It's not necessarily working with only NetApp data, so if you have any type of file service environments which is accessible through NFS, then basically we have an as a service type of offering where you can actually push that data, so you can sync that data into Amazon, and then you can use Amazon services. So basically software as a service. So as I mentioned earlier, with MapReduce environment, you either need to figure out how you build a MapReduce close to your data, or how you move your data where the MapReduce is. So this is what basically this service is doing. It helps you sync the data into the public cloud where MapReduce as a service is available. Does it make sense? Okay. So a lot of content, most of them non-technical, some of them technical at the end. This is what I wanted to share in this kind of digital transformation era. I hope I shared something useful for you today. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer it. If you have any comments like it's all boring or I don't know where this whole thing is going on, then I'm open to receive it. If not, I'd like to thank you for coming, especially in the morning. Especially if you had a party, I didn't. If you don't have a question now, you can find me in the booth till the early afternoon, and I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you so much for coming.